Pat, is Brent here? Did you notice?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I'm going to mute everybody. Unmute yourself, Jim.
Okay.
Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. Hope you'll come back often. Tell your friends about us so that they can join us too. I want to start this evening with the show's prayer by Father Ron Walters. Father?
Almighty God, just as our models imitate the beauty of your creation, may we imitate your kindness and generosity to us in our relationships with fellow modelers. Bless us now and always. Amen.
Father, thank you so very much for all your help during the show. We really do appreciate it. Now I want to run the video for our show's sponsor, which is Brennan's Model Railroading. Dennis Brennan is the owner.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis' spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
And I really do appreciate Dennis sponsoring our show for us. Now I'd like to turn to Bob Davidson to talk about our scholarship program a little bit. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. It's actually been an exciting week. We've received our first 2 applications already for the scholarship. So that's really great that the word is getting out and young people are paying attention and are interested in participating. Coming up this weekend, is the big show in Springfield, the Amherst show. And if everyone would stop by National Capital Trains, Bernie's helping us out, and he will have the banner and some flyers there at the show. So please stop by and pick up a flyer. As I mentioned last week, please just get in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat again. If you'd like to get a copy of the flyer for you to distribute at a local show or at your modeling club's next meeting, that would be great and very much appreciated. We had our own division banquet this past weekend, and Ed O'Rourke has offered to put a mention of the scholarship up in the NERX, which is the Northeast Region virtual convention that will be taking place this spring. And so we'll have a presence there as well as in the division's newsletter. So anything any of us can do to get the word out about the scholarship would be appreciated. A couple of questions that have come up that I want to make clear. Anyone in the United States is eligible to apply for the scholarship. So this is not anything that's restricted to any one region or division of NMRA or anything like that. And also the deadline for the scholarship, we need to receive the applications by July 1st. So there's plenty of time to spread the news, get in touch with some of these students if they are seniors in high school or college enrollees right now, and tell them please to take a look at newtracksmodeling.com/scholarship, and you can find information as well as an application. And as always, any donations that any of us can make to help this program continue to grow would be appreciated. So thank you, Jim. That's what I got to say.
Thank you so much, Bob. And let me also mention, we're giving 3 $2,000 scholarships, and one of those 3 scholarships was funded by the Pacific Coast region of the NMRA. And I really want to single them out because I'm very hopeful that in the future, more NMRA regions and divisions will see fit to join the Pacific Coast region as the leader in wanting to be a part of our scholarship program. We would also hope that the other model railroad organizations, such as the O-Scale Kings, the National Association of S-Gaugers, the TCA, the TTOS, the LOTS, all of the train organizations out there. This is a way for your organization to benefit. We'll promote you every way that we can possibly think of to do it. And all you have to do, you don't have to vet the people. You don't have any of the legwork and so forth to do. We'll do all of that for you. But we need the donations in order to be able to offer the scholarships to the kids. And if we want young people to stay in our hobby and grow with us as model railroaders, I can't think of a better way than to help them get an education. So Bob, to you and your committee, thanks so much for everything you guys are doing. It's just unbelievable how this is growing and taking off, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
All right, with that said, I do want to go to Pat Rivard. A while back, Pat came up with the idea of being able to offer achievement program, NMRA achievement program awards for people that did something on our show or helped us with the shows. And I contacted the NMRA's national chairman, and he agreed and said he thought it was a good idea and gave me the guidelines, which Pat has. So Pat, I'd like for you to talk about it because I know that you've got some people that are interested in doing it. And frankly, if you've done the shows in the past and you've made contributions on the show, done segments, just talk to Pat about it, and Pat can give you the information that you'll need in order to document that in the future. So Pat, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Jim. I know we brought this up before, and I know that there are a lot of people on this program that have done a lot for the program by having clinics on certain items that they're doing, certain projects. They're all capable of running this program that they're doing for the AP award. Now, there's a number of things that you can go for on an AP award is structures. One's author, and there are a number of people here that are offering items or programs to Martin Breckbiel, and he is going to put it in his latest article as what do you call it?
Newsletter.
Newsletter. Right on. Anyway, it's a great thing to work for, and I myself am trying to do it myself. There's a lot of things I need to work at. You got to have, I think it is 7 out of the 12 that are available, 7 of the AP awards to get your Master Model Railroader. Now, the first one that's the easiest, if you have a layout, is your Golden Spike, and that's if you've got a lot of your layout done, you can actually apply for that. So anyway, don't be afraid to ask. I know that Greg Cassidy is working on his. I think it's his authors, isn't it, Greg? Yeah. And it's just amazing that a lot of the things being done here, like working at a show, sponsoring this money that we're giving to these these people who want to go through program in college, is another way of doing this. By working, you sit there for 8 hours, you are able to apply for this program. So, you know, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do know that there are a lot of people out there who are able to do it. And please give it a try. Get a hold of us. I'll talk to Jim. Maybe somehow we can help you get there. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
There's no question about it. When Pat originally came up with this idea, and I really appreciate you doing it, Pat, I hadn't even thought about people on the show getting achievement program credit. I've been involved with the achievement program ever since I've been in the NMRA. In fact, it's the reason I joined the NMRA in the first place. And I've been the chairman in 3 different regions around the country for the NMRA in this program. So there's very few questions I haven't answered already or heard asked, or excuses why you don't want to participate. But if you are doing one of our show segments, you can get credit for that. If you want to promote us at a show and man our booth and so forth at a show and talk about our scholarship and what we do here, you get credit for that. If you have done a clinic for your local club or somebody else, you can't redo that clinic on our show and get additional clinic credit for it, but you can get volunteer credit for it because you are making a contribution through your volunteering in the hobby. So there's different ways that you can use what you're doing on our show to your benefit in the achievement program, if it's a program that you see fit to participate in. And any way that we can help you, we sure would like to do that. And Pat, I can't thank you enough for spearheading this and coming up with the idea.
Thanks, Jim.
Next, I don't know whether he's here or not. He's supposed to be. His name is Brent Jeffers. He's from Kansas.
Yes, he is.
And he's doing a clinic this coming weekend. Brent, how are you tonight?
You're muted, Jim.
You're muted.
Try that. Is that better?
You got it.
Now I can hear you. Listen,
Okay, yes.
I appreciate you joining us. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing this weekend.
Well, my club in Atchison, the Northeast Kansas Railroaders, has some new families that have joined with junior members, and they're all enthused about it. They may run on our club's layout or when we take our modular layout to train shows, but a lot of their equipment is really not that reliable. Some of them may have, we say, dubious toy train origins and things like that. And so my clinic is to show them how to tune up their HO rolling stock so they get better performance, more reliable operation, and less frustration.
Sounds great with me. I wish you the best of luck. And frankly, if they'd like to join us on the show, you've got the login links. Just please feel free to pass them along to them, and love to have them, because we'd love to be able to have more young people on the show or participating with us with the show. It's just a question we don't know how to get to them. So if you can help us in some way, or if they are interested in the scholarship program, hope you'll pass that information along to them.
I had not heard about it, but I do plan to include that in my presentation Saturday.
Fantastic. And I hope you and maybe other members of your club would be interested in joining us in the future. And in fact, if you'd like to have a segment on our show to talk about your local club and what you all are doing and so forth, I'll be glad to arrange that. Just let me know.
All right, fine. Just 2 things I want to mention. the background, my video right here is a friend of mine, Al Sawyer, built this layout, and I helped him get started on it. I taught him scenery techniques, and then he went all crazy. But so this is the work of Al Sawyer. I wired his layout up and helped him, coached him when he was getting ready to start laying track, and taught him scenery techniques, and then I just turned him loose. So this is Al Sawyer's layout, his Canyon Lake. And the second thing is the shirt that I'm wearing here is from one of my other clubs, 16-inch gauge outdoor railroad, Kansas City Northern Railroad. I'm a secretary in that club. So club in Atchison, I'm the secretary, and we have a 12-inch gauge railroad, and then we have HO modular layout. And so there's a 16-inch gauge. So I kind of spread myself around sometimes.
Well, we love to hear about all of it. But thank you so very much for being here this night, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Brent, this is Ron Walters, Father Ron. Atchison is my hometown. I grew up there.
Oh, wow.
You probably know my cousin, Larry Haupt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's in your club.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. So, yeah, I know Larry. He shows up at most meetings. And
he's from my mom's side of the family.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't go with us when we go to Lawrence for the Lawrence Train Show at the first week of March. So he usually comes out, although he doesn't move as fast as he used to.
Well, you can tell him that you saw me here.
All right, thanks. I
Father
will.
Father Ron says our prayer for us before each show. He's a key part of our organization here.
Well, do you get back to Atchison at all?
My sister lives there. She's he's employed at Atchison Hospital. I don't get back very often. Being a missionary Franciscan priest, I have other commitments. So,
well, if you do get back there, I'd love to meet you in person. Of course, now I have to say, I live in Kansas City, Kansas, so I'm an hour away from Atchison. So I don't just roll in. I plan my trips.
I bet you do.
And Brent, if you and your club would like to have one of our banners to take to your train show out there in March, let Bob know, and he'll make arrangements to get you one of our banners, because we are trying to make sure that we try to get as many young modelers knowledgeable about the scholarship as we can.
I'd love to hear more about that. Thank you.
And Bob, if you could put your email in the chat function, then Brent, I'll let you contact Bob directly.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Now I want to mention something here before I told you that we started the group, the Facebook group, Do Tracks Modeling. We've got about 115, 120 people now that have joined that group since we started it a couple of weeks ago. And I'm happy about that. We need more posting on it. We need more people to join it. We think it can be a lot of fun and a way, frankly, to extend some of the conversations for a longer period of time than we're able to on the show. So if you're interested in it, just go to Facebook groups and then join New Tracks Modeling. We're also now trying to talk about a new program for us, and that's the Boys and Girls Clubs around the country. I recently wrote an article for my local newspaper about the Boys and Girls Club meeting people to provide modeling knowledge to the kids that are coming after school to the Boys and Girls Clubs. Boys and Girls Clubs are interested in programs that they can offer the kids to keep the kids busy and so forth while they're there. And they don't have anything on modeling, at least in my area. So I wrote the article, and it was published last Friday in my local newspaper. And Sunday morning, I got a call from a local man. He's retired. He has a lot of plastic kits. Not all of them are model railroading related. Some of them are structures, but others are different cars or military items and so forth. And he said, I'd be willing to donate the kits to the club. And I said, well, what they need more than that is people to help the kids figure out how to build the kits. Because a lot of the kids, at least in my county, and I'm sure in other places too, may not have a dad that's at home and able to help them. And the Boys and Girls Club, if they can provide that kind of help in learning how to be a modeler and build kits, I think would be an excellent program for us to get behind. So I'm happy about at least one person signing up for it in my local community. I'll be publishing an article in the upcoming O-Scale Resource magazine about this, and another one in the S-Scale Resource magazine about this. And we'll be talking about it in our newsletter. But I hope that you'll take some thought about maybe contacting your local Boys and Girls Club to see if they could benefit from something like this, and whether there's some role that you might be able to play or your local organization might be able to play to assist the kids that are coming to the clubs after school have something to do and something that they can build with their hands to learn the skills that we all learned at a young age that have carried through our whole lives. So I'm enthusiastic about this program and hope that maybe it'll stir some ideas in a lot of people's minds, and maybe some other places can start it too. Lastly, I want to introduce Martin Breckbiel, MMR, who is the editor of our new newsletter. And it's going very well. I think the February issue, Martin tells me, is full now. But Martin, I'll let you talk about it a little bit.
Well, you just woke me up from my nap, Jim. You think I'm kidding? But no, we're up to about 20 pages, and I think that's a comfortable size for a newsletter. In fact, it's probably a little long, but it's pretty much finished right now for February, pending a little bit of editing, adding some links from YouTube presentations that have yet to take place, and some other odds and ends. I wanted to circle back, though, to the AP thing, though. You can get AP author credits through sending me an article to put into the Observations newsletter. And as near as I can tell, that gets rated at the same rate as a regional publication. So you could rack up a few points as long as the PDFs of that are on the website and available, they qualify. So, it's not just writing something for, you can benefit if you're chasing after your AP author fairly easily. Send me a couple articles and we can grind you out some points fairly quickly.
Yep.
Hey, Martin, this is Keith Stamper speaking. I'm supposed to do a presentation tonight, and I'm working on the AP. In fact, I'm working on my author right now.
Right.
And my question is, if I present this, there has to be a handout. How's the handout going to be done?
I'm not so sure a handout is relevant when it's a video.
Electronic? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
It can be a video. It doesn't have to be.
We have a handout. It's a video handout.
Right.
It's on YouTube.
Okay, so
the record is there. There's a record there on YouTube.
okay.
And you get you can have the link to that. If you just grab it off the link to when you go to apply, where it says, you can just put in that YouTube link, and that's the link to what you did.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Keith, you got to reply back to your question in the chat from Greg Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
You should contact him because he's got his full complement of 21 points that he's allowed by that method towards his 42 points right there.
Okay, well,
he knows how to put that into the form and all the accounting of the points. So he'll help you out. Shoot him an email sometime and he'll help you.
Okay. I don't want to belabor this, but I've got a couple of magazine articles out there. In fact, the Narrow Gauge Gazette has just published my layout in the most recent one, the January-February edition. So I think if I tally up all my points, I'm actually at 64 points right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's good to have 10% more than.
Well, that's what I figured. Yeah.
At least. No,
All right. Well, I don't want to hold up the show. So sorry. Thank you for the information.
No problem.
No, but I think that's important. And Martin, I'm glad you brought that up because it's an easy way. I mean, I just tell you something else that some people may not realize. If you have submitted an article to a magazine or anywhere, as long as the publication has accepted it, you don't have to have a publication date. It doesn't have to have been printed. As long as they accept it and will send you that documentation that they have accepted your article for publication at some point, that's all you need for the achievement program. And that counts the same as if it's been published.
So, Jim, would that be the release document that I've signed? I signed that for White River Publications.
That's
Is that
it.
what you're talking about? Okay.
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
I've done that for the RMC as well. Okay. Thank you.
Actually,
Because that way you don't have to, let's face it, some of these publications, it may take them quite a while from the time they say, yes, we want to publish your article till actually the date it gets published.
Right.
I know it is for me with the people that send me stuff. So as long as your article is accepted, that's published.
Okay. Well, the Gazette, I sent my article to them in July and they published it now in January. So it took quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's actually pretty fast turnaround, to be honest.
The RMC was faster. I did an article for the RMC on Power on Board, and that came out very quickly.
Yeah, but they're a monthly versus a bi-monthly.
Yeah, that's true, Martin.
Okay, Martin, you got anything else?
I was just going to tell Keith that what he needs to get back from the editor is a quick email note that also tells him the number of estimated pages.
Yeah, I've got that, Martin. I got the number of pages in the actual. I've got the physical magazine.
Well, I mean, if it's not published yet, that's what you need, so you can add up the points for on the tally sheet.
Thank you. It has been published. It's actually in the January article.
I know yours has, but for anybody else.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
There you go. Okay, I'm
All
good.
right.
I'm out of here.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, now let me turn to Chris Course to talk about the upcoming February the 21st My Bill program. Chris? Is Chris not with?
I don't see him, Jim.
Well, all right. Let me talk about it then. February the 21st is our next My Bill show. We had, I think it was 10 people that showed models last week for the January segment. So I'm encouraged about that. What I'm trying to do is get the once a month My Bill segment of our shows to be the whole show, the whole 2 hours. And it depends on you all. If you want to show your models, then I'm trying to make sure that you have plenty of time and that we can accommodate your desire to show your models and talk about them a little bit. But it requires you to send the information to Chris Course. And Pat, I don't know whether you have Chris's email that you can put in the chat function.
We can get that done.
Okay, and that's where you have to send the information, photos of your models, descriptions of what you might want to talk about your models and so forth. And if you've never been a part of the My Build before, send Chris a picture of yourself that he can include in there. So it goes to railrunner130@hotmail.com. And Chris will get back to you and arrange for you to be a part of the February show. Again, it's February the 21st, so you got plenty of time. But I hope that you do enter it, and I hope you enjoy the participation. Well, let me start the show. And to start it off, I need to make an announcement about Bob Gilmacher. Bob is a super scenery builder and is going to be doing a series on scenery for our shows, but he can't do it right now because of other situations that have come up in his life. So I had to postpone his events until a couple of months later. But he will be doing them, just not on the original schedule that I had published and talked about him being able to do them. But I'm looking forward to that series because I think you'll really enjoy it. Now, with that said, for the first segment for tonight's show is Frenchman River's Model Works, Build Along, by Tom Farrell. So, Mr. Farrell, welcome, sir.
Well, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
This evening, I am going to feature part 2 of 3, but we will be finishing the lobster boat this evening. So, just want to thank James and Anna Cleveland. They're the proprietors of Frenchman River Model Works. And I just want to say this is an outstanding resin kit. It has a great amount of detail to it that is, you'll see, will be brought out tonight by finishing it with a variety of paints. And Frenchman River is also the York legacy models and some new ones. These are structures that are iconic in our hobby. And I think most of you know, I consider him a living legend. He's quite a modeler. Anyway, let's go on here. This is where we left off last week. I had sprayed the hull and the cabin with this Krylon chalk paint. And as I mentioned, these are relatively easy kits to put together. The art is in the finishing of them. So this was the paint team, as I refer to all the different paints that I used to finish this model this evening. I primed the model last week with a gray primer. And then as I just showed you, I use this chalky finish, which gives you a very nice antique weathered white finish right off the get-go. And I'll show you along the trip here tonight where all these paints are applied to the model. That's what I use there for reference. The first color I applied was this, and I rarely use these flow pool paints, but I wanted a base green here. And so I got out my old flow pool Poison, and I hand painted that in between on the rear deck. Next, I used this polyscale Guilford gray, and I hand painted the inner cabin deck. And just with a brush. And that's the overall look. You can see all the detail, see the nail holes and the wood grain. So the idea was not to paint this so much that you cover up all the details. Next, I chose another gray from Polyscale, a darker gray, Guilford gray. You don't have to be too careful putting it on the deck, but you do have to pay attention to the perimeter. So you'll see there's a white band that I left around the perimeter. Now, even if you get some gray into the white band, you can go back and paint it white or vice versa. I call that a bounce till you get it correct. I had a few instances where I had to go back with white, go back with gray. These are just base colors, so it's not too important how carefully they're applied. Next, as I mentioned in the previous video, I intended to go with the classic red, white, and blue for the final colors on here. I used this acrylic dark blue, it's called. I just hand painted it on here. Then I scratched the surfaces with a wire brush. That brought out the color below it. Again, you want to go with the grain. These are still rough finishes, so you don't have to be too terribly careful. We're just trying to remove paint because we're going to be building layers of light colors to achieve the final look. For these wood slats on the back of the boat, I turned to a gel stain, this oak color. It's sort of a translucent color, so I painted it on there several layers and scratched it off. You can see it's a pretty good weathered look there. And then for the trim, I use this acrylic again. I use the scarlet color, and just with a flat brush, an artist brush, I just highlight these sideboards. On the other side of the boat are additional boards and additional call for this scarlet color. So, and I did put a blue stripe across this the top of the gunwale here. There's a better look at the rear decking. This whole look will improve as we go along. It's a process. There we are. Next, they give you these lobster boxes. These are a paper type material, laser cut. They come on a little tab like this, and then you simply cut them out. They expect you to put wire, or I'm sorry, rope. We'll call them handles here. I found that quite tedious. I did one of these. One was enough. They also give you lobster traps. These are laser cut from that same type of paper material. These look great, and there's a trick. They give you these instructions, and that's how you do build them. You basically fold these tabs up like they show here, step one. So you fold the ends up, and then you take the lid or the outside, and you serve it here. And I put just a little bit of super glue along this edge. So when I folded this up and attached it right here, it made for it sealed the quote lobster trap. And when that was dry, then I went in with a fine needle of super glue, and I did this perimeter here on both sides, the ends, if you will, and super glue. You can't even see the super glue on the finished model, and I didn't paint them. They look great just as they are. Then I glued them onto the back of the boat here. I put one inside, so you can see the super glue there a little bit. And I super glued them to the deck here and just in a random fashion. Next was the railings. After the initial primer, the base color of white, the background wash of green, and then the blue, these penetrations were basically not large enough to accept the railings, the wooden railings. So I simply hollowed them out with an X-Acto knife. And there's the railings there. They are just made out of the same material as these lobster traps. And this photo, getting a little ahead of myself, but I painted these windows. I blacked them out. I painted this black. There's that blue stripe I was referring to. This is that gel dye, that oak, not dye, gel stain. I wanted to put a little bit of wood, real wood on this thing, despite being cautioned by a couple of our modelers. And then I started with some pan pastels on the side of the boat here to start the weathering process. I just used a brown pan pastel, which is basically a pigment of an oil-based pastel, like a chalk. So that's the progress so far. I'm not, of all the details on there, I'm not real excited about this wheel they came up with. If I got ambitious, I'd go to a model boat supply store and put a real wheel on there. I may do that. For the instrument panels, I simply painted them with this aluminum from Testers. You know, I've had these paints basically since I was a child. I've never used them as an adult. And I thought, God, these things are 55 years old. And I thought, well, let's try this. And it was still a viable paint, never been opened. And I painted this base silver, and then I went back with this natural steel, they call it, and I highlighted the gauges, basically. And I put a little dab on that door. It's effective. Everything looks fine. I did touch that up. And this was touched up, but I'm not real excited about that wheel. Just a little side note. It's my out of focus window glass. This is the laser cut acetate they give you with the model. Now, I really appreciate this because of all the things I do in the hobby. My least favorite thing is to cut acetate for windows. And the fact that they had them laser cut, they went right in. I just cut them out. I mean, more or less cut, you have to cut the tabs off. And I laid them in place and I used this canopy glue. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this. It dries completely clear. It's frequently used in model aircraft to do the canopies in those models. That's where it got its name, but it basically dries completely clear. And there it is right there. I got a little pan pastels on there right now, but believe me, they're crystal clear. So there again, I hit this with a liberal coating of pan pastels. And to take some of these harsh scratches from my wire brush, I took this very fine sandpaper. It's like a flexible sandpaper. I just lightly sanded the entire model anywhere I had the scratches. It gave me this terrific weathered look. This is the advantage of doing things in layers. If, you know, for example, see the, you know, an artist likes to do things in layers and show different colors. I put that layer of green under there just to add a little interest to this. So it's not just stark blue and white. There's just an underlying color there. It makes for a really effective model. So then I placed it into the area where it will go on the rustic buffalo road. I took out a crane barge that I built, scratch built. I put this in place. This is the Frenchman River fishing boat that I did about 3 months ago. This is what got me in trouble to do this one. There's the clear shot of the boat. So you can't really tell that it was scratched anymore. There's a couple of details that were added in here. These are all, this is a metal anchor and a metal chain. I simply painted it black. And then I hit it with a rust color. And then I super glued it on there. This little derrick thing with the pulley, it's just a cast metal part. I painted it black, reamed this hole out with my X-Acto knife. Then I hit it with a weathering color. There's looking down at that angle. Just put a little dab of super glue on there. I'll go into some of these details in a moment here. There's an up close. So it came with everything you see here, but the figure. So these buoys, how this works is these buoys are attached to the lobster traps. And the lobster traps are thrown into the water, and then this floats up. This is this boat's color. And as you'll see, one of these is on the roof of this lobster boat, denoting that white and yellow and white stripe buoys are for this particular boat. So that's their drill. And, he comes with a couple of paddles and the spear. That's all that same cardboard material. I painted this silver, hit it with a rust color. Did my best to try and make these look like lobsters. I may go back and try that again. Remember, lobsters are only orange when they're cooked. Otherwise, they're like a brown or green color. I put a few in here. I have one escaping here as a little joke. I got some on the floor here. Just a little chaos. From a distance, that wheel looks presentable. But isn't that a fine looking model? That's all resin, basically 3 pieces, and just these detail pieces that come with the model. There's that buoy on the roof of the cabin. That tells all the other fishermen that if they see these white buoys, it's this guy's boat. Really, really attractive model. See the details on the side here, the nail holes. I had some, just general. There's the, see the light sanding took away all those ugly, crude scratches. It looks quite weathered. And it's really just Tamiya primer, Krylon chalk white from a spray bomb can, poly and acrylic hand brush paints, light gray inside, dark gray, and blue, scarlet for the sides. Then I scratch it with a wire brush and then sand it with a very, very fine sandpaper, and it looks like it's 100 years old. There's the boat coming out of the harbor. Added another guy here. Really nice models. So now that's the end of part 2. There is a fishing shanty. So this is as Jim refers to it, this can be an industry on your model railroad. You can have a lobster boat and then a fishing shanty where they actually sell the day's catch. So the final segment of this next week will be the shanty itself, which is also a cast resin. There is no associated parts from Frenchman River models on the shanty. It's just one single casting, but I'm going to kit bash it to make it far more interesting. So, any questions from anyone?
I think it looks great. I think it really could be a new industry for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That steering wheel, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
You know those fancy wooden toothpicks with the fancy ends on them? They're wood. They're kind of like toothpicks have been turned on the end a little bit. If you cut them off and put them on each one of those spokes and then put a center in that wheel, it would look pretty good.
That's a good idea. Just because it's lacking detail at the moment.
Yeah, that would add the detail you need.
Yeah,
I think.
That's a good idea. I'll try that, and if it doesn't work, I'll
you can always take it off.
Yeah, take it off and try it.
Maybe you can show us how it looks next week, Tom, because that's a great idea.
Yeah, it is. This is a very. I just want to say again, just how nice these resin kits are. And again, it's all about the art of finishing them and technique. Share this one could do. It is simple technique.
Yeah,
looks good.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Gotcha. And one thing that I wanted to do earlier that I wrote it down and then I lost the piece of paper. I think it is John Mick. Am I right, John? No?
I think he had to leave, Jim.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm sorry, I missed it. A friend died, and John was going to tell us a little bit about it. we're losing so many people because of age that it's just too bad. So I'm sorry that I filed that up and didn't get him before he had to leave. Well, next I want to run the video for the National Association of S-Gaugers, and then introduce Tim Hubner to talk about our S-Scale modeling segment of the show.
S-scale or S-gauge is modeling in 1/64th scale and includes American Flyer, standard gauge, and narrow gauge. S-gauge, or 3/16 inch to the foot modeling, is often called the Goldilocks scale, an ideal combination of detail and scalability to model reasonable-sized areas. This combination makes S-scale both versatile and easy to work with. Ready-to-operate locomotives and rolling stock are available from a variety of vendors. There are also manufacturers of equipment, buildings, track, and details in kit form available for those who love to build. S-scale is the ideal scratch building scale, large enough for amazing detail, yet small enough for a layout. To learn more, visit the website of the National Association of S-Gaugers at nasg.org, where you will find the history of the scale, information about S-scale clubs in your area, current manufacturers, online groups, and resources to help you on your journey into the wonderful world of 1/64 scale model railroading.
Well, I appreciate the association sponsoring this segment of our show. So let me turn to Tim Hubner for tonight's segment. Tim, welcome. Pat, he's not here.
I'll see him.
Okay, and we don't have a video for him?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't know what happened, but I'll try to find out what happened to Tim, and we'll try to get him in next week. Well, now I have a new modeler I want to introduce, Alfonso Moreno. He has a company, AXM Paper Space Scale Modelers. And I wanted to talk about his company, but he is going to build on our show one of his paper models of the SpaceX Dragon module in O scale, 1/48 scale. And I think that this might be have the potential to be a new industry, or at least a new traffic on a lot of people's model railroads. So Alfonso, I appreciate you doing this. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and about the products and so forth that you have?
Thank you, Jim. Now officially, again, I thank you for inviting me, for allowing me to speak to the group. Hi, gentlemen. I'm from Port St. Lucie, Florida. And yes, I have a website, AXM, that is my initials. And I've been doing this for quite a long time, even before I had a computer, the old school way, designing paper models with just a calculator, knowing how to scale up and down, a ruler, a protractor, in the old days. But then when I got a computer, then I had to relearn and how to make a model in a computer. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. I have presented a PowerPoint presentation for you guys, and I will make an introduction talking about my website, what is about, how I approach in the design of these models, and the tools, etc. So let me share my screen. I decided using my iPad. My computer is kind of slow. That's why I am going to be using my iPad, and allow me. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So So yeah, when Jim approached me, inviting me to this group, I was kind of surprised because you guys make it's the topic is totally off. I don't make trains, but he was interested in the scale that I work on. This model is the O scale, which at that time it was kind of new to me. I didn't know what was the O scale, but other than that, it's the same as 1/48 scale. So being on the same page, yes. Most of my models are smaller scales, 100 over 1 over 144th, 1 over 100th. And I decided then to do this model in 1/48 scale. It's about the SpaceX Crew Dragon space vehicle. It's a version 2 of the Dragon that Elon Musk designed. The version 1, it was a simple capsule that was in charge of bringing payloads to the space station. Then it evolved into the Dragon number 2. There are 2 variants. The one that you see here is actually the Crew Dragon. You could even see the windows there for the crew. But there was a similar vessel like this that was only to bring cargo on the trunk. So paper models, for me, I've been doing this for quite a time. If I can go back to, and this is part of my studio, and my signature model is right there, a space shuttle. Why is that? It's because I was more in during the space shuttle era is when I started making these paper models. But if I can go back to my childhood, I live in New York, and back in the 70s, I was hooked up to the TV watching the Apollo missions. It was then that I feel attracted to everything about rocket launches, etc. And happened that our town, Copake in Long Island, we were very close to Bethpage. Bethpage, if you want to know, is where back in the days, the Grumman Aerospace Corporation was located there. And that is a place where the lunar lander was made. As a matter of fact, my dad, I remember, used to have some friends working at a dad base at plant. He used to bring me stuff, pamphlets, brochures of the lunar lander. But it was not until I came across with a paper model of the lunar lander. The Gulf Oil Company back then, they were selling these little paper models in the gas stations. And I think it was then that I never knew that years later I would end up making similar paper models. I have my own logo. I started designing it in 1998. It was then that the idea came to me to show the models that I started designing to the public. The logo has that oval with 3 colors, has the colors of the Ecuador's flag. That's the country where I was born. You could see the space shuttle going to space, trailing a sequence of a assembly of the paper model. You could see a little paper there with a drawing of the shuttle. It's being cut, and then more parts are being added. So in essence, that is my logo that represents how how the model comes together. This is the banner of my my website. You can see the space shuttle, and that is a paper model that I made, a logo. And that was my first space shuttle model done in cardstock and paper that I made in the early 2000s. So there you go. That is paper. I'm then I realized that I just noticed that for every shuttle mission, there were some changes being made to the shuttle and to the tank. So I started doing research, and this helped me put together a log that is available at my website, and it's a great guide for modelers, the space category, to see if they want to make a particular space shuttle mission, they can see what changes that orbiter had to go through and the details. The same thing, changes in the external tank. Let me go here. So you can see, if you go to my web page, you are gonna see a bunch of space shuttles, and each one is different than the other. I went online in 2006. A year later, I was fortunate to know that my website was among most of the other websites that were doing paper models as well. That opened a lot of doors for me and for my website. You can see the logos there of NASA and other agencies that little by little they discovered the models that I was presenting in my website, and I feel that, you know, I felt so fortunate. In 2009, an Australian magazine approached me, and they wanted me to make a model of the space station, but for kids. So that's one of the designs that I made. It was available in a magazine, and then it went online. I'm from Ecuador, and in the early 2000s, Ecuador was able to launch its first nano satellite, which I made a model of it, and the agency of Ecuador allowed me to present those models on their website. Glenn Research Center also approached me to design one of the payloads that was being prepared to go to the International Space Station. This particular model that you can see there was highly, highly accurately. And why I say that, because they provided me with blueprints, all the measurements, everything. So I was delighted to present that model in full detail. Otherwise, if I would have only need some photos, and the details would have not been so accurate. Same thing with Goddard Space Center. They sent me a lot of technical information for me to model their spacecraft, the MMS. This was in 2014. It's called the magnetosphere multi-scale spacecraft. I was very lucky with this model, because at the end they invited me to the actual launch of the spacecraft. NASA also had a program to take your child to work day. So they wanted me to share my graphics, the skins that covered the paper models, for NASA to bring kids and to make their own rockets with my graphics. That was something, you know, cool. This is the model of the space station, a paper model space station. The scale is 1/100, very detailed. It took me at least 2 years just to research everything about every element. And Glenn Research Center was able to make that, to put together that same model and present it during their 75th anniversary. But it was not until 2020 that I got an email from a museum in Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville, it's close to Boca Chica, and if it rings a bell, Boca Chica is where Elon Musk has the facility, the launch facility for their Starship. So I was lucky enough to present. They wanted me to present SpaceX related paper models, including our topic, the model that you see at the bottom right, that's the Crew Dragon, and 12 models SpaceX related, including Falcon, Starships, and the Crew Dragon, and Falcon Heavy were presented during the exhibition to the public. I was also invited to attend the actual launch facility, and back then, this was the beginning of the Starship program. You could see me there, standing right next to the prototype of Starship called the Starhopper. Johnson Space Center is it's in Houston, Texas, and that is a center where they monitor and they do everything related to the International Space Station. So I got an email from someone who worked at Johnson Space Center, and they surprised me because they've been building my crew vehicles, my cargo paper models, and they have been displaying it in the very
console in front of everybody who is working there. You could see on the bottom, on the photo on the right side, I'm highlighting the area where the AXN paper models are being placed. So when I started doing paper models, now that I have a computer, then I had to do some research and what are the programs that I would need to use. Basically, these are vector graphic programs. Mainly, I use Adobe Illustrator, but that is not a free program. You can have a license to use it, or you can pay a monthly subscription to use it. But there is an open source program for whoever is interested in this. It's called Inkscape. And by the way, I don't have any, I'm not making any money by announcing or advertising these programs. But these are the programs that I use, the Adobe Illustrator. Inkscape is doing the same thing. But what is a vector graphic program? So when you design, when you draw, you're actually drawing only lines. And these lines, what are called the vector lines, when they are enlarged, they don't lose the quality. The resolution is maintained. It's very different than when you use a program, that it's not a vector program like a bitmap. If you enlarge it, you're gonna see pixelated image. Making paper models in the space category, actually, you are doing the basic geometrical shapes, like a cylinder or a cone or truncated cones. In this picture, I'm showing you a cylinder. What it consists is the body. Now you will need to know the diameter, the circumference, and for the truncated cone, also that would be a trial and error if you want to do it without having a program that will allow you to do it. So there are obviously in the old days when there was no computers, I had to do with math, with a calculator, looking for getting the radius, how to get a circumference, and that way I can make a cylinder. But now there are programs that will allow you to do that. And the program that I mostly use is called Cone Layout, but that is not a free program. Template Maker, it is an open source, it's free, and the results are the same. So whoever is trying to make, for example, a cone, truncated cone would be that area in the rocket that will be a transition between a larger diameter and connecting to another part of the rocket that has a shorter diameter. This is how the program looks. You put the numbers, you put the upper diameter, lower diameter, and you have the template to import into your vector program to start designing. The same thing. This is the template maker app that will allow you to make a truncated cone. Now, why I say this is because when I design models, first I have to make a sketch. Once I decide what scale I use, I draw I make the design and the program, and then I start getting those numbers, the measurements. I use the metric system, and I put that information into the cone layout app, and I get that template that will allow me to do that part in paper. Same thing when I design. I have been making the Starship model, and here's an example of a nose cone. So what you see in the computer is the nose cone has segments, has rings. In order to do an individual ring, I get the templates here on the left. You could see all the rings that will make the nose cone. I will add connecting tabs, and you could see how once I complete ring by ring, they're being glued on top of each other, and that's the way how the nose cone is being put together. In this picture, I'm using a metallic cardstock. Tools and cardstock, that you need to know what type of paper you're going to use for the paper models. The basic tools, the background surface is a cutting mat. That's the green surface that is in the background. I use an X-Acto knife, and the blade that I commonly use is number 11, if you want to know. The tweezers, scissors, ruler, and there's a scoring tool that will allow me to fold and score parts of the model. I also have make use of different rods, wooden rods with different widths, and it will allow me to curve small pieces from the model. For the most part, I use water-based glue, in this case, the Elmer's glue. I also use glue stick, and in some parts of the model, I make use of crazy glue like Loctite. Paper, it's cardstock with a width between 90 to 100 index weight, pounds of weight. Comparing to what is a standard paper, you could see I put it in I on purpose in this slide. I put together in the middle what is the width of a regular paper. It's 20 pound weight, comparing to the cardstock that I use to make my models is 110. If I convert that into grams, we're talking about 165 to 200 grams of the paper width that I use to make the models. So this is the Crew Dragon. It's a preview of what I will be presenting next week. You can see it's very high, it's fully detailed. It has a trunk, and it has a nose cone on the top that it opens, where you can see the docking mechanism. In this case, the Crew Dragon only docks to the space station. The front and the back, this was one of the early designs when they put logos of SpaceX and the Dragon in the front and the back. But the current library, they made some changes, and I will show you in the next few slides. But this model, as you can see, being from the front, you can see the two windows. The front doesn't, the trunk doesn't have the solar panels. It's in the back. You can see the black area. That is the solar panels covering the entire back of the spaceship. From left to right, Elon Musk is showing here all these designs. From left, the number of windows were more, and there were 3 in the front and 1 on each side. That was a configuration only to test the launch scape system. Notice that the capsule, the top capsule, has openings on each side. Those are called the Draco exhaust openings, where the exhaust will come out from those openings in case of an abort during launch, and the crew will be that will be their way to escape. The other the photo on the right shows another variant of the Dragon 2 that is not for bringing crew to the space station, but bringing payloads in the trunk. This is a comparison between the real vehicle taken from space, approaching the International Space Station. The nose cone is open, and you could see the docking mechanism. And on the right is my paper model. The paper model is based on photos, so I'm doing my best in getting all the details. The model that you're going to see me building is pretty much this. Consists of 2 parts: the capsule, which is fully detachable from the trunk. We can you're going to see me putting magnets in between the 2 that will connect. I have 2 scales. The bigger scale that we're going to be talking about is a 1/48 scale, and the smaller is the 1/100. Here it is. This is the smaller 1/100 scale compared to the larger 1/48. This is a prototype, but pretty much this is what we are going to be building next week. I'm going to show you this. It's pretty cool what happened here. These photos show the logo of the Crew 1 mission. That was the official launch of a Crew Dragon, bringing 4 astronauts to the space station. That happened 2 years ago. One of the astronauts was a Japanese, so it was a mission that carried the first Japanese aboard a Crew Dragon. The astronaut he actually contacted me via Instagram, and he showed me that he downloaded the model. This was 1 month before his actual mission was going to take place. He built the model, and he presented it to some journalists and some TV people in Japan, and they prepared their program, and they streamed the actual launch using my 100 scale model, the Falcon 9 with the Crew Dragon. So if whoever is interested in following this build along next week, the model is available at my website. You can go to www.axmpapermodel.com. I think Jim has put the link of my website there for everybody to go. And the manual, you're going to see a Falcon 9 category. It has 11 pages of different models that I have made throughout all these years. But the last model is the one that we're going to be talking about next week. And here, this is the library, the current library. You could see the falcon, a dragon head in the front, and in the back, the X from SpaceX company. The PDF file is a free download. It consists of 8 pages. Pretty straightforward how to build them. But as I say, that page has also 2 links to the actual assembly instruction manual that you can go by and see how this is being made. But next week, I'm pretty excited, and I'll be showing you step by step how to build a capsule first. I think, Jim, that's what I wanted to talk about. And if somebody has any questions.
Alfonso, I can't thank you enough. I think this is going to be very interesting and fascinating. And I don't think we could find anybody with more knowledge about the space program to do this for us than you are. So thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to being with you next week to see the start of the build.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
I want to mention here, as you are describing your techniques and all, you're talking about space, but I can think of a lot of model railroad projects that could use what you're doing, whether you're building a silo on a farm, or, that you see going across the country, you see fuselages for Boeing 737s. All of them have shapes and such that your techniques would allow a modeler to do. So what you're doing, we could build upon for a lot of other model railroad focused projects. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, thank you.
That's exactly what I'm hoping part of this is going to help all of us with, because the way that I've never seen paper modeling like this before, particularly with the kind of detail that Alfonso puts in his models and the work and so forth that he puts into it. So I think that it's going to be great to give us all some ability to think about building some models in paper that we've never thought about before. So thanks for the question, and Alfonso, we'll see you next week. Thanks again.
You're welcome, Jim. Thank you.
That was just great. Thank you. Well.
All right, now I want to introduce a different subject. Santiago Pinada is from Bogota, Columbia, went to LSU for his fine arts degree, and he's going to be talking to us about the appearance of our scale models. And from my standpoint, our scale models as art. And I talked to Santiago a little bit about this. And Santiago, thanks so much for doing this tonight. I really do appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Jim. Thank you for the invite. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to speak to your audience today. Let me share my screen here for a second. How's that?
Yes.
Good, thank you. This in some ways is a kind of response to the article that you put out on the newspaper, I think somewhere around October last year. And it has to do with the conversation of scale modeling as art. That conversation, while extremely interesting, is a very problematic conversation, if you ask me. In the sense that people seem to be speaking about it from very different points of views. The ideas that are thrown around seem more like opinions rather than arguments. And while fascinating, we don't seem to find any common ground about what we're thinking about here. And yeah, I've always thought that the places where these conversations are held nowadays, forums and social media, are not particularly conducive to this kind of deep, interesting, nuanced conversations. I mean, who wants to read a never-ending thread about the relationship between art and modeling, where people inevitably are going to say something rather arrogant or something utterly ignorant, and people seem to speak on top of each other, and not much progress is made. And when I saw your column, your very passionate column. I thought it was very interesting, and I thought perhaps this kind of video format would be better suited for in any way contributing to the topic, and laying out these ideas in a more interesting way. So here I am. The title of my talk is Unshrinkable: The Appreciation of Scale Models. I'd like to start by saying that I love my models as much as the next guy. I really appreciate them. They're a fundamental part of my life, and I'm happy to have found this sort of passion. But at the same time, there's an aspect of our model making which is more theoretical than empirical. And I'm perfectly aware that for a lot of people, the hobby is something of a source, it's source of joy and enjoyment and fun, and may not be so interested in the theoretical aspects and the conceptual aspects behind scale modeling. And so I'm in no way intending to push those ideas on anyone. But I think that a little bit more arguments rather than opinions would be very useful for our community to make progress in a conversation that is very difficult and very problematic, if you ask me. And so the appreciation of scale models, here we go. I'd like to explore three notions, essentially, and three notions that are somewhat related to the idea of scale modeling and art, but at the same time, I want to speak outside of that conversation. I'd like to point people in a different direction. And the three notions that I'd like to explore are the following. If scale models are not art, what are they? And without, in a dispassionate way of looking at them, what are we talking about when we talk about scale models outside of the art world, and perhaps looking at them from the side of science and engineering, which is a particularly fascinating topic. The second notion that I'd like to explore is the idea of the self-propelling miniature, which is a very particular characteristic of our models, and set them apart, for instance, from static modeling. And so our scale models, particularly model railroading models, are very particular in that sense. They speak to a kind of production which you don't see in, for instance, military modeling, and even ship and airplane modeling, even though those are also self-propelling, but the constraints are different. We'll talk about that in our next installment. And finally, I'd like to give a bit of an overview of the problem of scale models, not only historically, but technically. We tend to think of our models very much from our passion and our hearts. There's a technical aspect of scale models that has to do more with the sciences, physics, mathematics, and engineering. So something like that, I think, may be interesting and useful for our community's further understanding of scale models. But let me start with a very generic experience that I think we've all had, and I think we can relate in many, many ways. You invite someone over, someone that is not interested in model railroading, perhaps friends, perhaps family members, close relatives. You talk to them about your trains, and you show them your collection of fine crafted brass steam engines and passenger cars. And they're all interested right away. Everyone seems to recognize these artifacts as special. No one dismisses them quite easily. They are immediately attracted to them, even though they're not interested in starting a hobby like we are, which is an interesting idea in and of itself, that we cannot dismiss these objects as not important from the get-go. But you're showing them your collection. Perhaps you're running a small train or a long train or whatever it is. You're not being very specific because you don't want to overwhelm them with things like the governor part of a steam engine or a brake system in a particular freight car. But you show them your collection, and everyone seems extremely interested. You tell them about the nuances of the production processes in today's market, You tell them about the finesse in the models, the sophistication, the resolution, how beautifully crafted they are. And they're all responsive. They all look at them and say, yeah, they're really wonderful. And at some point in the conversation, someone will say, they're definitely works of art. And if you're feeling adventurous, you push the conversation a little further and you say something like, well, thank you, I really think they're beautiful. What kind of art would you say they are, if they are in effect art? And then after giving them a second look, someone will, of course, say the following: they're wonderful works of sculpture. And at that point, I sort of dropped the conversation because I know immediately that what we're talking about and our understanding of the scale model or scale models in general is fundamentally different. So we're coming from very different perspectives. And perhaps if I get to do anything tonight is I'd like to dismantle the idea that scale models have anything to do with art. I found this interesting comic strip that I thought was very illustrative of the situation that I just talked about. This guy is showing his layout to his friends, perhaps neighbors, who knows. And he says, I wanted to show you guys the latest addition to my train layout. I just finished it. It's a perfect replica of the Centerville post office in the 1930s. And his interested friend says, amazing. Look at the detail. You can even see little people inside. And then the guy on the right with the red jacket and the red cap says something which I think we all can relate to some degree. He says, I'll bet you wasted a lot of time on that, George. This situation is precisely what I was just talking about. We are looking at something from a completely different point of view. The guy on the right thinks it's a waste of time. The guy on the left is probably doing something that he loves. And there's a fundamental difference there. Look, if you ask me, at the end of the day, scale models are more related to painting than to sculpture. That is an argument that perhaps requires not only more time, but a much more of a scholarly approach for it to be developed. But it seems to be a kind of a trope or a general misunderstanding that because a depiction is three-dimensional, thus it is sculptural. And if a depiction is two-dimensional, thus it is painting or pictorial. The problem with that is that nothing in the art history discourse says anything like that. The problem of sculpture is not necessarily the depiction of a figure in three dimensions. It can look like that, but the fundamental problem of sculpture, like I'm going to argue in a second, is completely different. And the idea, for instance, about dimensionality, which comes up a lot in our hobby, has more to do with painting than with sculpture. But again, that kind of argument requires more time for it to be developed. And if you ask me, again, when we look at our beautiful scale models, we're not looking at a sculpture. We're looking more of something like a three-dimensional projection of something that either was or is in the world. And if we're talking about a projection, we're talking about a depiction that has to do more with geometry and dimensionality. And again, those are all ideas that are more related to painting than to sculpture. But let's look at the idea of how scale models have almost nothing to do with sculptures. I brought to your attention, I'm going to bring to your attention two sculptures from great masters in the art history discourse. One is Andrea del Verrocchio, early Renaissance sculpture, great genius, and one that is more closer in time to our time frame, which is Richard Serra, a great American sculptor. But let's look at this one first. We're looking at a bronze cast sculpture by Andrea del Verrocchio. And this is a great, great early masterpiece that I thought was very instructive when it comes to telling people about the fundamental problem of sculpture. Pewter with Dolphin is a sculpture that was placed initially in the center of a fountain gracing the entrance of a Medici villa, the 1470, close to 1470 early masterpiece by Andrea del Verrocchio. Now, speaking about misconceptions, a lot of people say, you ask them about Andrea del Verrocchio and they'll say, well, Leonardo's teacher. It's a trope that a lot of people, even people interested in the art world or art students, will say this. And that's a fundamental misconception, because Andrea del Verrocchio is not only a masterpiece, but perhaps along with Donatello, the greatest sculpture from the entire Renaissance. If it wasn't for Andrea del Verrocchio and Donatello, we wouldn't have someone like Michelangelo, for instance, which everyone seems to think it's the greatest Renaissance sculpture that there was. But the true contributions, the fundamental contributions of sculpture in the early Renaissance and throughout the Renaissance come from either Donatello or Andrea del Verrocchio. Bronze casting, for instance, which is the technique that we're seeing here, was revived by these two sculptures in the early Renaissance and revived from classical antiquity. But let's look at the sculpture a little bit more closely. Because the sculpture was supposed to be placed in the center of a fountain, Andrea del Verrocchio revived an idea from classical antiquity in which a sculpture didn't have a fixed composition, meaning that you wouldn't have to look at it from a particular point of view for you to appreciate the piece. So Andrea del Verrocchio revisited the idea of a sculpture who had either multiple compositions or no composition at all. What do I mean by this? If you look at the sculpture and you go around it, you appreciate the figure as you walk around it, you realize that something very magical happens. And this is that the composition resolves itself as you walk around the sculpture, meaning every point of view is as satisfying as the previous one. That is a remarkable achievement. It's a great, great masterpiece. The original is now housed in the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence as a national treasure. And it's a reminder of the great genius of Andrea del Verrocchio. Here what we see is an object that provides the possibility of a high-order aesthetical experience that is embedded in space-time. That, I think, speaks more about the fundamental problem of sculpture. Sculpture is not depicting in 3 dimensions. Sculpture has to do more with space and time and the possibility of an interesting aesthetical experience, considering those 2 dimensions of being in the world, so to speak. So again, if I'd like to reinforce any idea about this sculpture, is that the appreciation of it is temporal and it's spatial. And you're experiencing it and you're seeing it as you move around it, the possibility of a aesthetical experience of a highest order becomes possible. You look, for instance, at sound practices in contemporary art. People that do art with sound, those are always understood to be spatial, and they're also understood to be sculptural. So that's one example. Let's look at the second one. I'm not going to talk specifically about this work because it's so convoluted with even legal aspects. But I thought it was also instructive to bring home the notion of the fundamental problem of sculpture. The great American sculptor Richard Serra is famous for making these sort of minimalist, massive, raw, masculine, large-scale sculptures. And we're looking at one that was placed in front of a government building in Manhattan in 1981. It looks completely different than the one that I just showed you, because we're looking at many hundred years apart. Productions many hundred years apart. But the fundamental problem of sculpture remains. This piece, in particular, and the pieces of the long steel self-standing paints, steel paints by Richard Serra, are very, very special. What do I mean by this? When you look at a sculpture by Richard Serra, the sculpture is not the steel pane. That sounds a little mind-boggling. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, that's the sculpture. The problem is, if you actually study Richard Serra in depth and you look at what he's trying to do, even in some interviews he'll say this, the sculpture is not the piece itself. What he's interested in is in having the steel pane self-standing sculpture produce the possibility, or allow the possibility, of an interesting spatial and sculptural experience. So in other examples of self-standing steel panes, the idea is that the steel pane provides the possibility of an interesting space that you can experience. And that space in the final analysis becomes the sculpture. So again, when you're looking at a Richard Serra sculpture, the sculpture is not the steel pane. It's the interesting space that it creates around it. And of course, that allows for a possibility of an interesting aesthetical experience to emerge. And of course, those experiences are, like in the previous one, time and space related. You have to experience the space, you have to walk through the space, you have to feel the space in a different way. And that allows for an interesting sculptural experience to happen. In this case, for instance, in the square one, it's so divisive. The piece is so divisive. It's placed in a square where people are supposed to greet each other, to recognize each other as citizens, to share space, to say hello to each other. And the fact that the piece is so abruptly placed is in a way telling you about the nature of the space that it's in. It's a square. We're supposed to recognize that space as different. So again, the problem of sculpture has nothing to do with depicting something in 3 dimensions. And if you go back to the problem of scale models, I can't imagine a great sculptor thinking, I'm going to build the most amazing sculpture that I can imagine. I'm going to scale something down, and then I'm going to add every single detail that I can imagine. It doesn't work like that. And I think that the comment of looking at all the details in our wonderfully crafted scale models, that is a problem that has to do more with resolution. Scale and resolution are slightly different. But again, the idea of resolution is it's not an idea that you can translate to sculpture that easily, because sculptors are not thinking about making a sculpture with a lot of details. And if it has more details, thus it's a better sculpture. So again, I think we're better off calling our beloved miniatures and scale models with a different name. A sculpture is something else, and those kinds of easily accessed misconceptions, well, they're not hurtful, but they don't help. They're not hurtful, but they don't help us either. So that's perhaps the first idea that I wanted to convey. I'm going to make a few points here now, and I'll finish with one more slide that I think is going to help us meet each other at halfway, so to speak. Instead of calling our scale models sculptures, I think we're better off calling them miniatures. In our case, that's certainly true. Our model, railroad models are certainly miniatures. And in that sense, we are related to a tradition that is very much ancestral. Miniatures, we tend to think about them like, well, maybe toys and things like that. But miniatures are actually quite consequential if you think about it. Miniatures are, for instance, part of collections in museums everywhere. They were perhaps among the very first depictions that human beings came up with. And in that sense, miniatures have implications in very deep problems like the origin of language, the origin of expression, the origin of art, the origin of or implication when it comes to phenomenology.
Santiago, I hate to interrupt you, but I've got to try to. Can you bring this to an end because we're running out of time here?
Yeah, Jim, give me 5 minutes.
Okay.
So again, the greater problem of representation. When we're talking about miniatures, and our scale models are miniatures, we're talking about a depiction that is embedded within the greater problem of representation. That's a problem that again is fundamental, like I was just talking about, and perhaps I'll explain that idea later on. I was going to make a relationship between how representation may not be a problem that is particularly interesting in the art world today. It's very fashionable to hear, for instance, people talking about how certain artists go beyond the problem of representation. That's an idea that it's perhaps more contemporary than anything, but the problem of representation is not a solved problem, and it's a fundamental problem that our depictions are related to. If we are embedded in the problem of representation, you could ask yourself, well, what is the type of representation that we're talking about? And we're talking about our scale models. We should be talking about a kind of iconic representation in the sense that our models resemble that which is being depicted. And then if you want to add a figure of speech to our models, you would have to talk about something like a simile, not so much metaphors and other things, because those would be a little bit more problematic. Simile meaning that it looks like that which is being depicted. This one is very important, I think, because it speaks about the fundamental characteristics of our model trains. And that's the fact that our trains not only resemble the thing, but they have an intent to simulate that which the thing is depicting. So in that sense, we have something that is a simulation, but our miniatures, our scale models also are capable of moving by themselves. So scale models, particularly model railroading models, railroading models are simulations and automata. Those two characteristics are very, very interesting because they're very particular to this type of production. And automata, the problem of automata is a very deep historical, philosophical problem that everyone recognizes as important. If you look at the history of scale models, and again, I'm trying to tie it with something different than the art world, our modes of production of our scale models have more to do with the problem of applied and decorative arts, not so much with the world of fine arts. Fine arts has to do more with personal expression and the ultimate way of self-expression. And in a way, the history of the art world has been a kind of detachment from the conventional way of production and understanding of the mediums. If you look at late 19th century painting, for instance, artists try to detach themselves from academia and from the conventional ways of doing. And the world of applied arts and decorative arts are much more related to what we acquire when we acquire a brass or scale model crafted somewhere in the Orient. So something to keep in mind. We're talking about two different worlds in a way. Two more points. Miniatures and scale models. They are related, but they're not exactly the same. Miniatures are not as constrained as scale models. I mean, you make a little figure of your dog and you're not feeling particularly interested in depicting it in every fine detail, and you make something, or a kid makes a Play-Doh model of a dog, you're looking at a miniature. It's not a scale model because not everything in that depiction is scalable, meaning it doesn't translate in scale, or it's not the mustache is not related to the tail and things like that. Scale models, in our case, are miniatures, but scale models are not necessarily miniatures. If you make a scale model, for instance, of a human eye for medical and educational purposes, and you scale it up, that is a scale model, but it's not a miniature. So there's all kinds of interesting nuances when it comes to our understanding of miniatures and scale models. They overlap, of course they do, but we're not talking about exactly the same thing. And I'll talk about the problem of scale models much more technically in our third installment, but I'd like to show you just one picture before we close of something that I'll talk about next week. I'd like to meet you halfway, like I said before, and finding some common ground between when a miniature approaches the notion of art and how that may be interesting or problematic in that sense. We're going to be looking at two examples of two artists or craftsmen, a craftswoman called Narcissa Thorne. And I'll start with this next week. But there's examples where the idea of the scale miniature, of the scale model and miniatures themselves seem to approach the level of art where we seem to put them in a place of self-expression and notoriety, where we can see them in some of the finest museums in the world. So I'll talk about next week, next installment. Thank you for listening.
Santiago, thank you so much for doing this. I learned a lot tonight. I never thought about the sculpture in the way that you presented it. Thank you so very much.
My pleasure, Jim. Sorry if I took too long.
No problem. See you next week. Thank you. Well, now I want to turn to Martin Breckbiel, MMR, for his Scratch Building Corner. Martin. Martin, welcome.
Well, it's interesting. Enjoyed that talk from Santiago. It was actually directly relevant to the article. It's going to be in the newsletter.
Yes, it is.
Now, if I could just figure out, oh, there it is. Right. Okay. It's been a long day already, so this will be modestly lengthy or short, depending on your perspective. So 2 weeks ago, we made strap hinges, hung the doors, painted and glazed windows, stuff, put on the metal roofs, which were actually paper from Paper Creek, some other odds and ends, lots of other little details along the way. And now we'll finish this and make an end of this. Well, okay, we never make an end of anything. There's always room for later additions, modifications, and what have you. But there's where we went after last week. All together, all painted a particularly noxious color of green, which was deliberate, just because I felt like doing something noxious. Coach green is particularly annoying, but it's just enough to give you a lot of contrast against the gold gray. It's polyscale paints. As much as I love a good snort of Floquil, I decided to go with polyscale. The only issue with polyscale is things do warp occasionally if you put it on too heavy, too fast, or too thick. So a couple of coats, round and round until we got it there. The light over the steps on the entrance to the office, that's actually wired. There's actually it's actually functional as a set of wires on the inside. The office sign is actually made in PowerPoint. Little tiny sign, just scale it down until you get to what you want and stop and hit the print button. We'll just walk around the building real quick, take a quick look at things. We've got some roofing that's been distressed and folded and beat up a little bit, because that does tend to happen. Usually involves the intersection of one's head and the edge of the roof, but personal issues notwithstanding, people bend it over to protect the edges as well. The back windows, nice and clean and straight line, but it doesn't have enough signage. It's kind of boring the way it is. This building doesn't have any identity. We don't know what it's for or who it belongs to or what, if it has a purpose other than to fill up space on this show. So it needs an extra little bit of information. It also needed some other things. So now it's Lomax's welding and sheet metal fabrication shop. PowerPoint comes to the rescue again. Just a simple sign, print it out, scaled down, play with the fonts, have fun with it. Got a color green. It's not too nice, roughed up around the edges a little bit. It's not aged enough yet. It needs a little more abuse from the weather and the other elements at hand. And the back is just a couple of pieces of styrene angle welded into the roof, a little bit of tar to help it not leak on the inside, and more of that lovely noxious green just to make the evening so much better. And just another angle for good measure, but we're not quite done yet. I'm afraid there's more. Of course, the obligatory blank wall, the boring wall, which needs a sign. That's why you have a blank wall in a building, so you can put a sign on it. You can see what happens if you're rough with the building. As you turn it around, the door comes off the hinges. So if I pick it up wrong, those doors will come off. They're actually just hanging there, literally hanging there on the plinths. But wait, yes, there's even more. And we can blame Pat for this. This is all his fault. So I went back, taped the doors in place, flipped it over, added another course of stone foundation all the way around, but didn't stop there. Now you instigated an incident here of aggressive edition. It's actually on a piece of chipboard glued down. We've got the beginnings, the rudimentary beginnings of some scenery work, some gravel ramps up on the inside for both doors, lots of dirt, some crates and barrels. Gosh, crates and barrels. Where have I heard that before? That being delivered there at the doorway, some debris around back, hiding. Always hide your empty cans around back, right? And the beginnings of some shrubs and bushes and stuff and weeds. I just don't have enough laying around right now to fill this in. I need more debris. I'm such a tidy person in my shop. All the debris goes into a quart can and gets thrown away periodically, and the can's empty right now. So, well, except for some scalpel blades, and I'm not reaching in the can to retrieve scalpel blades. I like my fingers where they are. But this could use more, and someday we'll get it, either by me or whoever owns it in the future. I have no idea which way it's going to go. And a little more around the backside. And just for fun, I had a mold for some sort of cobblestone type thing. So I actually poured some of this. It's like a dental stone material, Merlin's magic material, whatever it is. And I honestly didn't think it was going to come out of the mold without shattering into a bunch of pieces, because it's very thin, actually. This is only maybe 1/8 of an inch thick. And part of it did break, but the rest of it was incredibly hard. And I had to actually saw this up to shape to fit inside there with a hacksaw. And it drops in. So there's more that can be done. Will I do it? I don't know. Maybe someday if and when it snows more than 6 inches outside in a single day, I'll get back to it. But I have other things to do in my life and time to do to keep busy. Someday I have to drill a hole. I have to drill a hole over here, let the wire out the bottom so we can wire that light. But I'm going to call it done for now and go on to the next project, because I'm tired of this one, to be honest, and it's time for something new. Structures are fun. I enjoy building them, but there's a point where I say, that's enough. I have to set it aside. I'll come back to it or not. And sometimes it's not. Next week, we'll do something else. I hope.
Neat looking building. Neat looking building.
So if there's any questions, scream now.
Looks good, Martin.
I like that roof. I really do.
Well, that was fun to do. You have to be a little careful with that stuff, because it's not a straight edge, so you have to cut it out very carefully.
Yeah.
But you want to cut it out carefully, but rough. And
Paper Creek stuff. What was that roof?
Yeah, that was the old Paper Creek stuff.
Yeah, I still have some. Okay.
Yeah, I have a couple. Not much, but every time I open up the last piece of anything, I scan it in.
Exactly.
I'm gonna print it out on some probably some heavier paper next time, if I can get the laser printer to accept it.
Looks good. Thanks, Martin.
Yep. All right.
Well, now I want to turn to a subject that we haven't talked about on the show before: vacuum farming for model railroading. And Keith Stamper is going to be with us this evening to discuss this. So Keith, welcome, and thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I need to share my screen, so just give me 1 little minute here to get set up. I was so busy watching that I turned my PowerPoint off. Not too clever, eh?
And Pat, can you get him on the screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm good. I'm good. I just need to share my screen. That's all. Just bear with me. All right, here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you see my screen, guys?
No.
I cannot.
Can you see
There
it
we are.
now?
Now,
All right,
now.
slideshow.
Now we're cooking.
Play from the start. Okay, so a while back I earned my car certificate, my rolling stock certificate as part of my MMR, and I built a combine. And I think I made a presentation on this to you guys.
Yep.
Anyway, the car was totally scratch built, apart from, of course, the wheels and the couplers and such. So I decided to make a vacuum box in a very simple device. So what I did is I took some scrap lumber, in fact, bits and pieces that were left over from our kitchen renovation, and I ran the wood through my table saw and made a little box. Well, a smallish box. It's about 8 by 16 inches. I cut a hole in the end of it for a vacuum pipe to go in, and you see those little slots that I've cut into the wood there. I'll talk about those later. There was a reason for my madness, but I'll tell you about it in a minute. So the hole in the end is where the vacuum pipe went in, and I can connect my shop vac to this box. Simple nozzle on the shop vac, which is something that came with the machine. It's just a Craftsman shop vac, which I've had for about 35 years, and believe it or not, it still works. So the bottom of the box, I just sealed it. I glued and nailed it down to make it nice and airtight. And on top, I got a piece of perf board. And as you can see, the perf board sits inside this lip in the box. Once I had the perf board on the box, I made an aluminum frame to fit around the outside edge. And that's why I had to cut those notches, because I riveted the frame together and the rivets fouled on the box. And then I put these little tabs on the side here, which I'll explain, hold a mirror image of this frame. So I made 2 of these frames. One sits on top of the other, and they clamp a piece of 40 thou or 30 thou, whatever you like to use, styrene in the center. So I use these clamps, these simple paper clamps. You're going to put this in the oven, so you may want to wear gloves. Things get awfully hot. So there you can see the clamp holding the 2 halves of the aluminum frame together. And the car roof I decided to build looked something like, as you see in this picture. This is the end of the combine that I built. This is the prototype. These are drawings that were in the Narrow Gauge Gazette by Harry Brunk. So in order to form the roof, to get this curvature, I made a form like this. And then I went to Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere like that, and I bought some modeling or fine wood without any knots or anything. I think they call it hobby wood. Not Hollywood, hobby wood. And I formed the shape of the roof by dragging it backwards and forwards through this form, which I'd glued or attached sandpaper to, about 80 grit sandpaper. And I managed to create 2 pieces, one for the clerestory and one for the car roof. Once I had that done, I had my 2 pieces, which I placed one on top of the other to make sure they were a good fit. And some methodology here. So once you've got your box made, if you've got your simple vacuum box made, you preheat your oven to about 300 degrees, place the styrene into that aluminum frame, use the clamps to hold it firmly together, and place the frame with the styrene into the oven on the middle rack and heat for about 5 minutes. Power on the shop vac, remove the heated frame and use your gloves. Press the frame onto the box over the wooden forms and press it down gently. You put those wooden forms on top of the masonite, and as you pull a vacuum, it'll pull the styrene down over the form and create a shape. Once you're done with that, you just turn off the vacuum cleaner and let it cool for a while, and then you can cut and shape the frame pieces, the pieces of styrene. Why am I starting my video? What's that? That just came up on my screen. Host asked me to start my video.
So I can see your picture in the video too.
Can you see me?
No, I can't see your picture, but I can see your screen.
Okay, good. That's what you want, right?
Yeah, but I need you to click on your stop video.
Stop my video?
See where it's crossed over on your
okay.
video?
All right, it's off now.
Right at the bottom.
Yeah, I turned it off. Okay.
Turn it on,
Turn it on again?
please.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Oh, on. There we go.
Thank you.
All right. Here we go. So I just buy sheet styrene. I buy the large sheets from the local hobby shop in Hamilton, Ontario, and use that as my material for my vacuum roof. I've actually made 2 vacuum roofs. I built a rail bus as well. This is now stuck. I can't advance it. I don't know what's going on. Here we go. So as you can see here, this material, and then I've cut the sheet, the shape that I'd formed in the vacuum box out. There you can see the two pieces. So those are two pieces of styrene that I formed over those wooden forms that I showed you earlier in the vacuum box. So there you see the roof of the car after I'd completed it. I bought clerestory windows from Grantline and used them along the edge. And that's it. I think it's pretty much basically what I did. I mean, there's a few more slides here, but I don't want to take up a lot of time because this is a very simple subject. So I got a merit award for it and I'm happy. Okay, so that's it, guys. If you've got any questions, fire away. I'll be happy to answer them.
What grade of plastic did you use for the forming?
I used 30 thou styrene, sheet styrene.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's worked very well. I built a rail bus as well, and I just used the this one, the lower piece. I just made a lower section like that and cut it and made the roof for my rail bus. All right, any other questions, anybody?
I think it's fantastic. I'd never thought about doing that. I think that's wonderful.
Well, you know, Jim, it's not actually my idea. I'm not going to take credit for it being my idea. It was in the Gazette in 1979, I think somebody did it.
Mm.
And a friend of mine out west did a beautiful car. He built a narrow gauge parlor car, and he did the same thing. He also formed a vacuum formed a roof, made a vacuum box. And making the box is easy. I mean, anybody who can do basic carpentry can just make a box like that. And a friend of mine does model cars, and he has borrowed my vacuum box to do parts for his cars as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it works great. It's a simple, clunky tool, you know.
Yeah, neat idea.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this evening because, like I said, I'd never thought about doing that, and this doesn't seem that difficult.
Okay, you're welcome, guys. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
All right, so I think that pretty well finishes our show for this evening, except for the caboose. Pat, if you can play that for us. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed the show. Most important, I hope you learned something. That's what it's all about. So happy modeling until next Wednesday. See you then.
Thanks very much. Good night.